Welcome to your online coffee break, where we discuss bite-sized topics that inspire, educate, and entertain. Here's your host, a software innovator, award-winning marketer, and astronomy and space buff, Chuck Fields.
Hello, thanks so much for joining me today. I am so excited to present my interview with Commander Mike Hopkins. He will be commanding the upcoming SpaceX Crew-1 mission scheduled currently for October 31st. We're so excited about this mission, and we're so excited to share my interview with Mike. Now, NASA is preparing to launch its first crew rotational flight of a U.S. commercial spacecraft with astronauts to the ISS, the International Space Station, as I said, at the end of this month. The SpaceX Crew-1 flight mission will carry astronauts Michael Hopkins, Victor Glover, and Shannon Walker of NASA, and Soichi Noguchi of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency to the space station from Launch Complex 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The launch will be the first time an international crew will fly aboard a NASA-certified, commercially owned and operated American rocket and spacecraft from American soil. Following the launch, the Crew-1 astronauts are scheduled to arrive at the space station for a 6-month science mission aboard the orbiting laboratory. Now, my interview with Commander Mike Hopkins is coming up in just a few minutes, but first I want to share a short interview I had just last week with Felix Schlang, the host and producer of What About It. Now, What About It is an amazing YouTube program, one of my favorites about space, rockets, and science. They have new episodes that come out every Tuesday and Friday. Highly recommend it. But here's the interview with Felix, where I asked him, of course, how his space journey began. Here he is talking about that. What drew you to space? Where did your passion for space come from?
Okay, that started really, really early in my life. My first memory of being in contact with the stars and with the planets that surround us is my dad, actually. He had a telescope not as big as mine, but it was a decent Newtonian telescope, and we watched planets. And I must have been, 4 or 5 years old, something like that, really, really young. And since then, I was basically hooked. I always hated that at school you couldn't really learn anything about it, because at least in Germany, there are no classes in schools about astronomy later on at university and stuff like that, but not at early ages. And so I started digging in. Basically, I read a lot of books, and I followed a lot of people. Actually, before I started my YouTube channel, I watched them all. Basically, everybody, every YouTuber that's out there about space, I've probably watched them once or twice. And so it started really, really early, and since then it's progressed a lot.
Well, Felix, you have this awesome program. What About It? I love it, and I love all your SpaceX updates. It is incredible. I'm blown away by same way as how often they update stuff and how often you can give so many fresh updates on that. So with that in mind, just what are you most excited about personally for the future of space exploration?
Well, it's pretty easy to say for me. It's SpaceX's Starship. If it works out, it's going to change everything about how we access space. The implications are huge. To drive down the costs per kilogram so low will open up so many opportunities for not only for colonizing Mars, which the project normally is connected to in the public opinion, but also science missions. Bases on the moon, all sorts of things. So my fingers are crossed, and I really, really hope that the engineers and Elon Musk and Boca Chica will have success with this, because in my opinion, it's the greatest revolution in the access that we have to space. If it really happens, it's going to be fundamental.
I totally agree with you. I got to ask you this: if given the opportunity, would you go into space?
I would. I've been asked the question a lot of times if I would want to go to Mars, and I have to say no to that, because it's really, really far away and it takes a long time, and I've got 3 kids and a wife. But I would be up for anything else, basically. Leo, maybe a trip to the moon, something like that. I would definitely, if somebody would come up to me and say, hey, you are going to go on the next Starship trip to the moon, yeah, probably would do that, definitely, in a heartbeat, yeah.
Well, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say, Felix, you rock.
Thank you. You rock too. Thank you very, very much for having me.
Thanks again, Felix, for sharing your story. Love your show. Again, folks, if you want to watch an amazing space program, just check out What About It. Again, links to that are in the show notes for this episode, or just go to whataboutit.space in your browser. Now on to my interview with Commander Mike Hopkins of SpaceX Crew-1. I had the opportunity last week to speak with Mike about this upcoming mission. Now, there was one other reporter present, but between us, we covered some amazing ground with Mike. First, a little background. Mike grew up in a farm in Missouri, and later at the University of Illinois, he earned a Bachelor of Science in Aerospace Engineering and also became team captain of the football team. Mike earned his master's degree in aerospace engineering from Stanford University in 1992, and at that time he was also commissioned as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Air Force. He was selected in 2009 as one of 9 members of the 20th NASA astronaut class, and since then he has spent 166 days in space. Mike is now a colonel in the Air Force and commander of the SpaceX Crew-1 mission, currently scheduled to launch at the end of this month.
3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
America has launched. So rises a new era of American spaceflight, and with it the ambitions of a new generation continuing the dream.
We're already counting down the days until Crew-1. That'll be the first operational flight in a Crew Dragon spacecraft. Mike Hopkins, Victor Glover, Shannon Walker, and JAXA astronaut Soichi Noguchi are to be the first multinational crew to fly in this new capable vehicle. This mission marks the return of a full crew complement to the International Space Station, and together they will celebrate the 20th anniversary of continuous human efforts on board the station.
Mike, thank you so much for joining me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, Chuck. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we appreciate it. We're looking forward to your flight. Now, I understand this is your first time commanding, and it's a brand new spacecraft, the Crew Dragon. Just, if I can ask, what's been the most challenging for you as you've prepared for this mission as commander?
That's interesting. I think certainly in this particular case, there's been challenges along the way, but at the same time, a lot of those challenges have been external, if you will. So how do you keep training during the middle of a pandemic?
Yeah.
How do you get ready for a space flight with some of those restrictions on it? And so I think that's probably been one of the biggest challenges.
Sure.
On the other hand, the great thing about being a commander is that you realize you don't have to do everything yourself, and we've got an incredible crew with a lot of experience on it, and so that has made some of those challenges easier to deal with and get through, because you are able to fall back on and not just my experiences, but their experiences as well. And when I say that, when you look, I've got Victor as a rookie space flyer, but Victor is not a rookie in my mind. He brings a lot of operational experience to the table, and I have relied heavily on his experience as well as Shannon and Soichi's.
Mike, if I can, I'm a fellow Christian, and I loved hearing how you took communion regularly during your last trip to the ISS, especially from the cupola. I was just wondering, do you plan on taking the Eucharist again? And can you tell us how going to space has impacted your faith?
Yes, I do plan on taking the Eucharist again. For me, having the Eucharist, having the body of Christ with me on space it helps you get through some of those stressful times. It helps you get through some of those times where you may feel a little vulnerable, right? Because for me, knowing that Jesus is with me, that helps me understand that I don't need to worry, that no matter what happens, that I'm going to be okay. And so I think it's in those moments, those reflections, and that's when it's the quiet times, and sometimes that's the harder times, right? When you're out there and you're doing it, whether it's a spacewalk or whether you're capturing a vehicle or doing the science on board, you get pretty busy and you're occupied. It's those moments when you get to either sit back and think about it before or after that I need to rely on that faith.
Now, Mike was also asked about his overall role as commander on this mission and how that role will be different compared to what Doug Hurley faced on Demo 2, which launched a few months ago. Here's Mike talking about that.
being the commander on Crew Dragon is a little bit, I think, new for us here at NASA. And what I mean by that, we've been relying on the Russian Soyuz to get to the space station for a long time now. And that always has a Russian cosmonaut as the commander on it. And you may have one of the U.S. person that's on the vehicle may be the commander of the space station, but we, in general, have never had to, for quite a while now, worry about the commander of the vehicle that's taking you there. And so that's what's making it a little bit interesting in the sense of I am the commander of the Crew-1 Dragon vehicle, but once I cross that hatch and I cross into the International Space Station, yes, I stay commander of that vehicle and making sure it's ready to go if at any time we needed to leave the space station. But at that point, I am now just another one of the engineers working on board under the commander of the International Space Station. And so kind of balancing that of making sure that you're ready to go on the launch vehicle, but then also making sure you're ready to go for this long duration mission on the International Space Station, and balancing those two demands has been a little bit challenging. One of the things that has made that a little bit easier is we have an amazing crew. We have an experienced crew, and so there has not been a lot of difficulties in that sense. I've been able to rely on all of their experiences, and I mentioned this earlier, even Victor, who's a rookie space flyer, but he brings an awful lot of operational experience with him, and I've certainly relied on that as well.
Now, Mike was also asked if he had any conversations with Doug and Bob from Demo 2 and what advice they gave him for this mission. Here's Mike talking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the nice things, we had an opportunity to speak with both of them probably about a week after they got on orbit, so that all the launch and the rendezvous and the docking was still fairly fresh in their mind. And then after they landed, it probably was a little bit longer before we had a chance to talk to them, but we did get to hear their thoughts on the undock and the deorbit entry and landing phases of it as well, and the recovery operations. And the thing that is great about those conversations is you get to hear about the little things that are never going to come up in a training program, and it's things like the noises, the feelings, the vibrations, the things of that nature that help set your expectations. And so one of the interesting things, of course, with the Soyuz is we've got years and years and years of people flying it, and so you have this gauge book out there that tells you pretty much every step of the way what you can expect from some of these little details that I'm talking about. And so this is still new. And so Bob and Doug have given us some insight on that, and so I think we've taken that to heart, and so hopefully, when we hit some of those moments, we won't be surprised by what we hear or feel, and then our goal is to make sure we record what we go through as well, and hopefully as time goes by, we'll kind of get that gauge book, if you will, built on this vehicle, this launch, this rocket, and so people will have good expectations moving forward.
Mike, it's been more than 6 years since you traveled to space. Just what are you most looking forward to this time?
Yeah, oh man, Chuck, it has been a while. What am I looking forward to? I got to be honest, I'm looking forward to, there's two answers to that. The first answer is, and I think that's for most every space flyer, is you look forward for a safe return. But also I got to say, I really am looking forward to floating again. I remember before my first launch, dreaming, imagining what floating would be like, what living in that microgravity environment would be like. And then you get there, and it's incredible. It's amazing. It's this idea that there's no up or down. And then what's amazing is you get used to it, and you that becomes the norm. But then what's sad is you land, and for me, very shortly afterwards, once you get readapted to this 1G environment, you forget. And I'm trying to remember, what is it actually like to float like that and to be in that kind of environment. So I have to say that's what I'm looking forward to again.
Now, training for Crew-1 has been unique. Mike and Victor actually started training early on, but then late additions, Shannon and Soichi, came later on in the mission. Here's Mike talking about what training experience has been like and how the crew has been bonding as they prepare for Crew-1.
Yeah, Victor and I, we got assigned over 2 years ago. And so we've had an opportunity to spend a lot of time together. Training out at Hawthorne, training here in Houston, and part of that as well has been going through some of the development and verification testing of this new vehicle, and at the same time going through the new training program, if you will, with SpaceX and the Crew Dragon, and so that was fantastic. But and then though we always knew that we were going to get we expected, I guess, that we were going to have late adds to the crew. And so that proved true. It took a while before final decisions were made on what our crew was going to be like. And so when Shannon and Soichi were added, we had to do some catch up, right? We didn't have the same kind of opportunities to bond as a crew, to figure out how to work together as a crew. Victor and I have had that chance to we kind of know what each other is thinking, and when one of us is silent or one of us is saying something a certain way, we kind of understand where they're going with it. We didn't have that with Shannon and Soichi, and so it's actually come together quite well though as a crew. One of the things that Victor and I wanted to make sure we did is bring in Shannon and Soichi and make them a part of the crew. They sit in the outside seats on the vehicle, and they don't have a lot of access to the controls or information on the vehicle, but we have committed to making sure they know as much, we share as much information as we can, because quite frankly, as I mentioned earlier, both of them are left seat trained in the Soyuz. They're extremely experienced, and so even though they may not be able to access the controls, they certainly have a lot of insight, and we've certainly taken advantage of that as a crew. And so I feel like over the last few months we've really gelled and come together as a crew, and so I'm very excited to get on orbit with all of them.
Now, Mike, this is obviously an incredibly historical mission. It's quite an inspiration, and I just have to say you've come a long way from growing up on a farm in Missouri. I just want what advice would you give to kids or younger adults out there who want to become an astronaut?
I think the advice I give is anything is possible, and it doesn't matter where you come from, what your background is. If it's a dream of yours and you work hard at it, you pursue it. This is one of the things I really love about being on this flight with Victor. Victor and I come from different places in the United States. I come from a farm in Middle Missouri. Victor comes from L.A., kind of the inner city. And yet, if you look at our life journeys, they are very, very similar. Both of us went to college and played sports in college. We both came into the military. We both got into flying. We both got into flight test, and we both have ended up here at NASA. And we're both getting ready to step on this rocket at the same time. And so, I think hopefully that maybe not just me, but maybe the combination of all four of us really can show people all across the country, no matter where you come from, no matter what your background is, that flying in space is a possibility.
Now, Crew Dragon is an amazing spacecraft, obviously a lot different than the Soyuz that Mike flew a few years ago. Here's Mike talking about what excites him about Crew Dragon.
I am very excited about really just the whole capsule itself and our interface with that vehicle. The 3 touchscreen displays that we have. It just provides an amazing amount of flexibility for us to operate the vehicle in a way that works for us as a crew, and so that's been fun, and I'm really looking forward to executing that on orbit and seeing that all the ways, the techniques that we've been training for the last 2 years, seeing them actually play out in space.
Now, Mike, we've mentioned before, it's been a while since you've been in space. The last time you went, you spent 5.5 months, which is incredible. But one thing I loved hearing about is when you came back, you enjoyed the simple things like rain. I'm just wondering, what do you think you're going to miss the most during this long duration flight?
The same. It's funny. We just had the tropical storm roll through here, a couple of weeks ago, I think. And those kind of things, obviously there's sometimes there's tragedy associated with that flooding, very challenging on some people. But I got to tell you, what you just said, when the rain was coming down, I took a step out in my backyard and I just stood in the rain for a little bit because I know I'm not going to have that opportunity for a while. And so, clearly I'm going to miss my family, but I am going to miss things like the weather and the environment and just the people and everything about being a part of life down here on Earth.
Now, anyone who follows the space program knows that delays are inevitable. They always happen. But with Crew-1 coming up, currently scheduled for the end of this month, got our fingers crossed on that one. Finally, this mission is coming to life. So here's Mike talking about how he feels about that.
It feels good, but I would say that most astronauts are probably going to tell you it doesn't feel great until the rocket actually lights and you're going uphill. Even for my first flight on the Soyuz, people often ask me about, were you nervous on the launch pad and all of that kind of stuff, and you are. But when the rocket actually launches, one of the feelings, at least I certainly had, and I suspect others do too, is a little bit of relief, because there are so many reasons why you might not get to fly. You could get sick, you could get hurt, the mission needs could change, and you could get pulled off of that mission. So that kind of feeling is always there, whether it's with NASA or whether it's with one of these new commercial vehicles. On the other hand, I would also say, though, that from the beginning we knew our launch date was going to change some, and it was going to move around a little bit. And so there's always that set your expectations. And so we had that expectation that our launch date was going to move a little bit. And so when it does happen, I think if it's not a surprise to you, it makes it a little easier to deal with it. So in this case, I think they put out that our launch date has slipped from the 23rd of October to the 31st of October. We are, if it was the 23rd, at this Friday, we'd be starting our quarantine period. And so, you're that close to that, and then the launch date moves. And so certainly that's challenging, but at the same time, I think we kind of expected that. And, bottom line is, it's not gonna really be real until the rocket lights and we lift off the pad.
Thanks, Mike. Godspeed.
Thanks, Chuck. Really enjoyed talking with you. I wish I had more time to chat with you, but again, it's great being here.
Online coffee break.
Wow, I'm so glad I got the opportunity to speak with Mike Hopkins about this incredible mission. I want to thank NASA for that opportunity. Thank you so much. I want to thank everyone just for tuning in as our prayers are going for everyone on this mission. Mike, Victor, Shannon, and Soichi, we just wish them all the best for this mission, for this incredibly exciting mission. We want to congratulate SpaceX for their part in obviously making Crew Dragon such a successful spacecraft at this point too. So again, we want to just thank everyone out there for tuning into the show. If you can do us a favor and share this episode with a friend, we'd like it. If you can give us a like, if you're watching on YouTube, that would be great. Or if you're listening on your favorite podcast application, if you can give us a good 5-star rating there, we'd certainly appreciate that. At any rate, thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure you tune in to the launch. Again, currently scheduled for October 31st, but we know that can be delayed easily. But at any rate, we wish the best for this crew and this exciting mission. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time. God bless.